The enemy of anything is everything, trying to do too much. That's true in business and in life. When we try to do everything, we usually aren't good at any of it. And one of my favorite stories that demonstrates this point is kind of a clumsy pizza guy who killed over 80 people between 1916 and 1918, a guy by the name of Manfred Richthofen. And Manfred was born in 1892 in what is today Poland. And he was born into a family of nobility. The only reason they were named to this station was because they had come from a line of military heroes. So Manfred's grandfather was a military hero, Manfred's father was a military hero, and Manfred was a klutz. He was super precocious, like just ambitious about everything, high effort, but oftentimes really clumsy. And so his father was kind of frustrated because he wasn't really kind of living up to the family name. And that was a bit of an embarrassment back then, to be nobility. So he sent him off to military school, kind of a boarding school. Still didn't do great. Tried a lot of the sports, and once again, fairly klutzy. Got his way into the cavalry, and eventually, over the next 5 or 6 years, by the time he was 18, he had finally started to make himself a name in the cavalry. Now, there were lots of examples of accidents and mishaps. Like one time they were doing a drill, and the whole cavalry team was supposed to go off and find something. And of course, Manfred, at some point, fell off his horse, broke his collarbone, but got back up on the horse and finished the mission anyways. And it was just kind of his way, just going crazy. And eventually made himself an officer in the cavalry. Right as he was named an officer in the cavalry, World War I broke out. So 1914, Manfred was in his young 20s. World War I breaks out, and he's shipped off to war as a cavalry officer. He gets out there, and he just gets started in it, and the militaries of the world invented something that changed everything, the trenches, trench warfare. What was trench warfare designed to neutralize? The cavalry, horses. And so everything that he's trained for and all of that suddenly goes out the window, just almost like that. So the cavalries were pretty much disbanded, or at least shrunk down to nothing. Manfred was made a trench rat, a glorified messenger. Somewhat out of desperation after doing that, he decided to go off and join the one place that would take anybody. If you had a pulse, there was this division in the military that would sign you up, and that was the Air Force, although it wasn't called the Air Force back then. So the life expectancy of a pilot or anybody in aviation was like 3 weeks. It wasn't very long. But Manfred was motivated enough not to tarnish his family's name that he went into the Air Corps. And true, once again, to Manfred Richthofen form, he went there and was just put everything he had into being a great pilot, trying to be the best at everything, focusing on everything, to horrid results at times. He finally got the opportunity to take his pilot's test and see if he could qualify for a pilot's license. Phenomenal takeoff and nice maneuvers and everything, followed by a spectacular end-over-end crash landing at the end. Broke a bunch of bones again. He actually crash landed twice while trying to take his pilot's test, but somehow survived. Somehow kept surviving these, tried harder and harder, kept, like adding more and more focal points, just this intensity trying to become a pilot. Eventually they couldn't resist, and I'm not sure if it's because they were like, well, let's let this guy get up there and finally end the pain or whatever. So they finally gave him his pilot's license. And by this time in the war, now dogfighting had started to become a thing, aerial fighting. Manfred actually went for quite a few months and couldn't shoot anybody down. Had a few close calls himself at getting shot down, but was just unsuccessful, yet somehow super lucky because he was still alive. And then one day in a chance meeting, he was on a train riding cross country, and he bumped into the most famous pilot of the day, a guy by the name of Oswald Bolk. And he went up to Oswald Bolk in typical Manfred fashion, went up right up to him and said, "Hey, how do you shoot him down? How do you do it?" And Oswald was kind of taken back, and he said, "Well, obviously I line them up and I fire and they fall down." And Manfred was, dismayed or whatever, but for some reason Oswald decided that he was going to take this guy under his wing. He felt like he had, I guess, literally take him under his wing. Now, here's the thing. Oswald Bolk, at this time, had been awarded the Pour le Mérite, which is like the equivalent of the American Medal of Honor today. And the reason he had been awarded this, he was such a huge aviation hero, is that he had shot down 8 enemy planes. Unheard of, all right? Manfred, meets him on the train, and Oswald decides he's going to take him under his wing, and this is where the tide started to turn. Oswald taught Manfred the power of focus. He said, Manfred, your problem is you're trying to do everything. I want you to focus on 2 things, and 2 things only. First, I want you to focus on not shooting and wasting all your bullets until you can see their goggles. If you can't see their goggles, I don't want you shooting. Second, I want you to focus on visibility, like use the sun, get between yourself and your enemy and the sun, come up from below them, use the clouds. Visibility in order to catch your enemy by surprise. If you just focus on those 2 things and nothing else, stop trying so hard at everything, but just focus on those 2 things, I think you'll end up being a successful pilot and maybe shoot a few people down. So Manfred did. He really focused on those 2 things. A couple days after he had started training with Oswald, Manfred went out on mission, shot down 2 enemies, his first 2, which was surprising to have multiple kills in a day. Went out the next day, shot down another airplane, and then another, and then another. Climbed his way up to 20. Oswald Bulk sadly died in combat a couple of months later. Manfred continued. Once he learned the power of focal points, these 2 focal points, he was unstoppable. He ended up climbing his way up to 80 kills, 80 other pilots that were shot down. What most people don't know is that Manfred Richthofen was determined, he was committed to this idea of focus. So this was a time when everybody was painting their airplanes, multiple colors, like lots of colors and everything. Manfred, the noble from a noble family who was mocked for being klutzy and unsuccessful, went with straight red, pure red. And of course, we know him as the Red Baron. So the Red Baron, probably the most famous fighter pilot, so famous that his face is all over pizzas. Like I've bought Red Baron pizza before down at the grocery store. Delivers hundreds of thousands of pizzas every year. He's so famous. Was an absolute klutz, a complete failure and just a mess to his family's name until he learned the power of focal points. And once he did, that was the key to greatness for him. And what I have found is that in business, for example, and in anything for that matter, focal points is one of the big secrets to flow and turning things into success for people, especially if you're a leader. If you can help people simplify and focus on certain things that are designed to succeed, that's good leadership. Let me give you a couple of quick examples of things that I've done in businesses to create flow using focal points. And hopefully these will be useful to you in your business. One example, I had a purchasing manager who we were working on shipping, trying to get our shipping costs down. And I went to her at one point and I said, tell you what, I'm going to let you have access to our profitability in our company. And you see this number, I actually pulled it up and I had created a profit and loss that she could look at that showed the percentage of shipping as compared with our income. And I said, if this number goes below 2%, I'll pay you 50% of the difference. Because we were paying like 3.5%. And that was a huge expense. It's a company that does today close to $30 million in revenue. And I says, if you can get this down below 2%, you get half of whatever the difference is. It was like magic. She was so focused on getting shipping down. I didn't have to go in and beg. I didn't have to have a lot of discussions. She ended up getting us down to like 0.8%. But it was at this focal point and saying, I'm going to align our interests with yours. You focus on this and we're aligned. We both win when you get it. And that's all it took. Here's another one that's very simple. I acquired a business some time ago and they had a commission structure that was just based upon the top line, just how much sales you do. Commission salespeople, they're going to go and do what gets them the most commission. And so if your focal point is top line sales, do not expect them to care about margins. Do not expect them to care about expenses because you've asked them not to. You've asked them to focus on top line sales. So we acquired this company and it was not terribly profitable. The only shift we made is that we paid them a percentage of the margin. And all of a sudden, everybody made more money, including the company, because we pulled our commissions into the margin as opposed to the top line. And so a lot of times businesses can make things flow without a lot of effort or even big time systems creation by just thinking about what makes the company successful, and am I aligning my people with it so that they win when we win? And find ways to help them focus on that. And so like the Red Baron, like Manfred, a lot of times it's the attempt to try to do too much that gets us into trouble. And so the enemy of anything is trying to do everything.